Hey, it's Joel.
And it's Bill. And today we're going to talk about 3 examples of different 3D printing methods and 3D print finishing methods.
And we're going to do it right here on 3D Printing Nerd. In front of us, we have 3 different examples that we're going to showcase of how finishing prints can be done in different ways. Bill, you want to lead us through the first one?
Absolutely. This is a project I did on our YouTube channel a little while ago, and I challenged myself to make an entire helmet using the cheapest 3D printer I could get, the ANET A8. I chronicled the whole journey over on our channel if you want to check it out. But this is the final product. Now, the A8, I believe it can only print in PLA.
Without upgrades, it is a PLA printer.
It is meant for PLA. So I did this whole thing in PLA plastic, printed in many pieces, and put together. That meant a lot of gluing, a lot of sanding, a lot of painting, more sanding.
And a lot of sanding as well.
Yeah, and then we did some additional sanding to get it to the point where it is right now. But I think a lot of people, especially if they're getting into prop and costume making, this might be the end product for them. They only want to make one thing, and they can print all of those parts, finish them, assemble them, and have a fully finished piece.
And I really love that you were able to showcase not just a low cost, but one of the lowest cost machines.
Right.
But you did trade cost for work, and you had to work a lot harder on this, right?
And sanity, a little bit of sanity. I had to sand it a lot just because there were some slight layer shifts, and I had to do a lot of filling. After the pieces were printed separately, getting them to stick back together in a way that was cohesive was kind of challenging. That's not to say that you would have the same example with your printer. Bigger printers now, that was a couple of years ago, higher quality printers now. So even a cheap printer printing PLA could do something like this very well.
Yeah.
And this guy right here would be ready to go for your next Star Wars costume.
I assume this is perfect for when Star Wars Land opens at Disneyland.
Absolutely. If they will let you wear helmets, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. But a great example of a one and done, something for yourself, finished with plastic, paints, sanding, done.
Yep. Now, the next example is just a little bit more complex.
What do we have here?
This is Mr. Handy from the Fallout universe. In the game, you can get a tiny model, so I wanted a little model of mine. The normal one is like 6 or 7 feet tall.
Which, now that you have a shop, you could eventually.
We could, totally. But I like my little fella here. Now, this was done on the Dremel Idea Builder, also in PLA, and it did a fantastic job.
How much sanding versus that to this?
A lot less sanding in general. I mean, less surface area and everything as well. But because it's a small model, a tiny detail, I had to be meticulous with the finishing work on it to get it to look really great. So it was printed on the Idea Builder, like I said, in PLA, probably like 0.2 millimeter layer height, something
pretty
like that.
standard.
Right. There are some tiny details that I knew the machine wouldn't get. So way on the back here, there's some text, and I actually laser etched that text after it was printed.
Okay.
So there was that added benefit. Now, if you were just going to make your one little Mr. Handy, you could totally 3D print all the parts, sand them, paint them, and glue them together. But for this fella, I wanted to potentially make more than one of them. And instead of making all 3 eyeballs and all 3 legs, which are the same, I made silicone molds of those 3D printed parts.
Oh, so you printed the eyeballs once. You printed the legs once.
Exactly, yeah. This is the body cavity right here for Mr. Handy, and this was the master that I used to make the mold. So this is my raw 3D print after it's been primed and sanded nice and smooth, and I made my silicone mold of it. Now, for these other fellas, like the legs, up until his accessories, I have one mold of that. Once I have that one mold made, I can cast as many copies as I want. So for each Mr. Handy, I make 3 legs. And I only had to sand one of them.
That's pretty handy. What is something like this molded out of? What is the material? Is it a resin?
So the mold is made out of a silicone rubber.
Right.
This is Mold Max 30. And the material that I cast out of that mold is a urethane resin. Okay. So this is probably Smooth Cast 300. These are all products from Smooth On. And they're awesome. By the way, Joel, have you been to the Reynolds in Kent yet?
No, I haven't.
It's, yeah, we should go sometime.
Yes, we should.
Because it's awesome. Reynolds sells Smooth On materials, and it's a magical wonderland of glorious possibilities. Anyway, so that was Mr. Handy. We could cast multiple copies, and then those pieces that are already sanded, already finished, can be painted and put on our model.
What I find amazing is that you did the laser etching on this,
Yes.
and then you mold and cast
Correct.
it, because that little laser etching, it shows up.
It does.
That's
Silicone will
incredible.
pick up fingerprints. It gets really, really fine detail.
But that's great if you want to make a bunch of these
Mm-hmm.
and they're highly detailed. You can still do that and save yourself some work by making a mold.
Yeah, so I would highly recommend if you're getting into 3D printing to make models or props and stuff, also learning a little bit about mold making. And you can find out more about mold making at punishprops.com.
I will put a link in the description, possibly on the screen right here.
We have a whole series of mold making videos. And if you're looking to get into it, making something small like this is great because silicone can get pricey.
Oh, so making small molds to begin with, to learn with, is great because it's cost savings.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, now let's move on to the grand finale.
This is amazing right here.
Right, so this was all finished, I think like 16 pieces, 17 pieces,
Okay.
something like that. This guy has 33 pieces, so we're talking like double the parts. This is my interpretation of the Blade Runner blaster. This is the raw printed pieces, everything that
This
came
is printed.
off of the printers. So the blue, everywhere that you see is blue, was printed on my Ultimaker in ABS.
Oh, okay.
Since having done this one and the Mr. Handy, I've swapped over to using almost completely ABS because I can sand it so smooth with a lot less effort.
Wow.
That's the raw plastic just wet sanded down to like a 2000 grit.
It looks injection molded.
It does, and it makes me so happy to see. The clear and black parts were printed on the form too. Now, this knurling, I did try and print that part, like the grips on the Ultimaker. It did an okay job, and it didn't do that good of a job.
That's
It's so
really
nice.
nice.
And then there's really fine knurling on these parts here and on some of the smaller parts. So a couple of these pieces were done on the form too, just to get that fidelity. If I didn't need it, then I would just do an ABS.
Yeah.
A lot faster, a lot cheaper.
And easier to sand, right?
And much easier to sand. Well, the Form 2 prints are very easy to sand
sure
as well.
they are.
And then similar to Mr. Handy, that for the text on the side of this guy, I laser etched that.
Ah, okay.
After I had done the finishing work on it.
Oh, okay.
Now, just like Mr. Handy, I made molds of every one of these parts.
How many parts again?
33?
33
I think.
parts, okay.
So one of those molds looks like this. So this part on the side was, this exact part that I'm touching was used to make this mold right here.
Oh, okay.
And then from those molds, I was able to cast all of our final parts. And my goal with this particular project was to be able to assemble it without using any glue.
And did you accomplish that?
I did.
Ooh.
Mr. Handy has plenty of glue in him, but this thing has all these proud screw heads, right?
Yeah.
So I used those as per the original design of the prop from Blade Runner to assemble the whole thing.
100% designed in Fusion 360?
Yep, it sure was. I even have some lights. Look at that.
Look at
the lights
that.
work. So these pieces were all 33 of them cast out of that mold, or all the different molds, like these guys here, and then polished and assembled just like that.
That's so incredible.
So this, in my humble opinion, is the pinnacle of what I'm able to accomplish with these tools, at least for now.
Well,
Until
absolutely.
I get better.
I think what's really great is you're showing us that you don't necessarily need adhesives in order to put your stuff together. You
Sure.
designed this
Yeah.
to take screws.
Yep.
And when you take it apart, all of the pieces can be laid out because
Mm-hmm.
they're not glued together.
Absolutely.
I think that's wonderful.
I'm a big fan of this one. Something else to note too, since these parts were all originally 3D printed, but the grips are meant to be this lovely amber, orange,
Right.
transparent, right? To get something that looks like that on an FDM printer, it's not really possible. The infill, or even if you print it completely solid, there's still going to be some inconsistencies on the inside of it.
That's right.
So that you can't see right through it. So having made a mold of the original black printed parts from the Form 2, from that mold I can cast grips using a urethane resin in whatever color I want and whatever level of opacity I want, using different tints, pigments, and
Oh, so resin
additives.
by itself is usually clear.
It depends on the resin you get. This specific one, I believe, was Smoothcast 326.
Okay.
Which is, they call it a color match resin, but it takes color really well because it is mostly transparent.
Okay.
So I used an orange tint on this, not a pigment. Pigments are opaque.
Yes.
The tints are translucent or transparent.
Oh.
And then I cast this inside of a pressure pot, which applies about 40 psi to all of the resin, and the bubbles that might be in there shrink away to nothing.
Oh, so it's not a vacuum where it's
Right.
taking the bubbles out. This is actually
Shrinking it
pressure.
down.
So
Right.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I was able to get the effect I wanted after mold making from a 3D printed part.
That's really cool.
Similarly, on the rest of the blaster, the metal-looking parts were cast out of resin, but I used a method called cold casting, which is you take that mold and you dust it with metallic powders, and then you fill it with your resin, and that outer layer has metallic powder in there that you can, polish up.
We're not talking very thick. Obviously,
No, we're talking microns thick, like dust.
but
motes.
enough to take a polish.
Exactly. And again, this is something that would be very challenging to accomplish with a raw 3D print.
That's right.
You try though with some of those metal-infused filaments. I haven't really done much with. I know you have.
I have.
That'd
It would
really
be
fun.
it would be interesting because with metal infused filaments, you'd be able to do something like this to a shine easily.
Yeah.
But then you're changing the dimensions because
Yeah.
you're sanding away so much,
Yep.
and so the idea of being able to take a part and then cast it, and then I think that's great for dimensional
It
accuracy.
really is. Yeah.
Especially
Which-
when you have something that's being
it's
put
important that
together.
everything lines up. Yeah. Then all the black parts here are. I could have printed all of the pieces in let's say a black ABS and sanded it down to that finish. But since I had the mold made, I just cast it in a black plastic. So not only did I make this without using any glue, it's all held together with screws. I also didn't use any paint. The whole
That's
thing.
so cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So yeah, this, in again, my humble opinion, represents the pinnacle of what I am able to accomplish with prop making and 3D printing right now.
But saying that, you made this, and no doubt this started turning
Oh,
gears
absolutely.
in your head. And
More stuff, moving parts. I need more lights. It has to make sound. If it could shoot fire, that'd be amazing.
that would be amazing.
Smoke. Definitely want to put smoke in all my props now.
Or there's smoke, there's fire.
Yes. Or there's fruit. What is it? I have a fruit roll-up flavored vape thing that I use for smoke effects in all our videos.
Because it smells like...
Because I have very little experience at vape shops, and I was like, sure, I'll take that one. Yeah. So look, if you watch our videos, some of the effects in the background, you see like a really cool smoke effect.
It's fruit.
Just know that it's fruit roll-up.
fruit roll-up. I'm sorry, fruit
Just
roll-up.
know that it's me in the background going, oh, it smells like fruit roll-ups.
That's amazing.
Special effects, everyone. Production
Wow.
value brought to you by your local vape shop.
Well, Bill, I want to thank you because these are amazing. And
thanks.
Not only, I mean, they're amazing, but it really shows the progress that you've made in your making and your prop creation, because that is awesome. There's no doubt, but you can definitely tell that you've learned some things along the way. And if we were to film this in 12 months, the props that you'd be showing off
Yeah.
would be completely different.
Yeah, you
And-
wouldn't even see them because it'd be covered in a shroud of vape fog.
If you want any more information on what Bill and Brittany and Punish Props Academy does, you can go to the website down in the description, punishprops.com, if I'm not mistaken. Any final words for the audience, Bill?
Don't be afraid to go out there and try a bunch of stuff. This part here, this blaster here, some of these parts I had to tweak and print and tweak and print half a dozen times to get them just right. But that's the best thing about 3D printing, in my opinion.
I'm guessing
Iterative
that
design.
when you were able to iterate on the design and you got that final part where you're like, this is perfect,
Finally fit.
it's that feeling of
Yeah,
accomplishment.
it makes me feel like Tony Stark, for real.
For real, instead of in your Halloween video.
Yes. Peter, why?
Please, please, I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
Too soon.
Too soon.
Thanks again, Bill. If you guys want any more information, go to the links in the description. Can't wait to see what you make and create, and good luck learning all the new tricks that we just talked about here. Fill, thank you.
You're welcome,
Really
Joel.
appreciate it, and we'll see you again real shortly here on the 3D Printing Nerd. We should high five.